who is the media director for the Green Party 2004 Cobb presidential campaign. He's the founder of the Pacific Green Party of Oregon and was the party's first candidate for governor in 1958. No, sorry, 1998. Blair worked as a consultant for the Center for Voting and Democracy and is a contributing author of the book Counting Votes, Lessons from the 2000 Presidential Election in Florida. He's currently working on getting instant runoff, IRV, votes to include the Oregon legislature. Blair Bobier. Well, thank you very much. I know a lot of these other people are better known than I am, so I'd like to give you an opportunity to give me some more warm, spontaneous applause. You shouldn't have. I'd like to thank people for coming out today. I know it's been raining a lot here lately, and so you're all here inside on a sunny afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and you're either very dedicated to democracy or you're really need to get some hobbies. What I'd like to do is talk about the role of the Green Party, which were the ones who initiated the Ohio Recount. I'll talk about how the recount worked, and more specifically how it did not work, and the status of our pending litigation, where things are now. And I'd like to put this all in the context of our current political framework and how our democracy is evolving in this country. The challenge is to do this in 15 minutes. I think there are both encouraging and ominous signs that have come out of this past election season. The encouraging signs are that we have an evolving new voting rights movement. The Green Party initiated the Ohio Recount. We partnered with the Libertarian Party. We got some significant help from a few Democrats, most notably Reverend Jesse Jackson. And Reverend Jackson really helped us put things on the map. The mainstream press was doing its best to ignore us, and it's pretty hard to ignore Jesse Jackson. There are a number of coalitions and voting rights groups that have evolved out of this, and a lot of conferences, grassroots activity. I think those are all very positive signs. I think one of the most incredible things we accomplished was the January 6th Electoral College Vote Challenge. We thank ourselves and Barbara Boxer and Stephanie Tubbs-Jones for that, but I really think that the Ohio Recount set the stage for that, and this new voting rights movement had a lot to do with it. I think the New York Times and the other mainstream press really missed the boat on a lot of what happened. Sheet of paper that I'm looking for. Well, in any event, the Times did recognize after January 6th that challenge came about in their words because of the relentless efforts of third-party activists, liberal lawyers, internet muckrakers, and other folks. But it's a real kind of we the people movement that has made this happen, and we're the ones that have to sustain this. There's also a lot of legislation that's pending now in Congress, and some other people are going to talk about that. I think the ominous signs that come out of this are, it should be really clear now that it's not difficult for the Republicans to steal an election. It's happened twice, and it's happened in the same exact way. In 2000, I'll stick to the last two. We've got a long history of vote theft in this country, and the Democrats aren't immune to it either. In 2000, well, I'll say this, there's three basic components that I think are similarities between the last two elections. One, they target swing states. It doesn't make sense to target a state that the Republicans already have in the category. They can't get New York or California. That would look too suspicious. So they target swing states. Second thing they do is they suppress the African-American vote, which is the most reliable factor, the most reliable constituency of the Democratic Party. And the third thing they do is they make sure that the person counting the votes and in charge of recounting the votes and overseeing elections is a co-chair of the Bush-Cheney campaign. It happened. Catherine Harris in 2000, J. Kenneth Blackwell in 2004. If you don't know about the voter suppression of African Americans, which took place in Florida in 2000, you can read some of the writings of Greg Palast. I think he's probably one of the best chroniclers. I think one critical point to note out of this, from the election and its aftermath, is the absolute need, the essential need in this country to have a genuine multi-party democracy. And the reason I say that is despite the fraud and the incompetence which led to this botched election, which was really an insult, an attack, and a threat to our democracy and to the Democratic Party. It wasn't the Democratic Party leadership that stood up for the American people or for themselves. It was the Green Party. So third parties have a historic role in our country of being the vanguards. Third parties who ended slavery, third parties who gave women the right to vote, and now we are at the vanguard of creating and protecting our evolving democracy. I think it's also important to note that while I'm very thankful that Senator Boxer stood up and challenged the Ohio's Electoral College votes, where were the other 44 Democrats? Bob Petrakis gave us a good encapsulation of some of the problems in Ohio. And if you haven't seen the video, the election protection video of the long lines in Ohio, you need to see it. It's at our votecobb.org website, VOTECOBB. It's streamed there. I'm not sure where else you can get it, but it looks like a third world country. Precinct after precinct after precinct in Columbus, there are people sharing polling places, waiting around the corner, down the block, in the rain. And, maybe there are incredibly long lines in the affluent Republican suburbs, but I didn't see any evidence of that. So there is clear voter suppression now. I don't know how any presidential campaign could look at what happened in Ohio and not challenge the results. I know that our campaign had to. I know that the Kerry campaign had millions of dollars left over, thousands of lawyers on the ground, and they stood on the sidelines. Senator Kerry failed to report for duty. So the Green Party did the right thing, and we called for an investigation first on November 5th, a couple days after the election and after we got over being stunned along with everyone else. We called for an investigation, and one of the things that I noted in that press release that we put out was some of the writings of Bob Petrakis and Arthur Wasserman, who had been telling us before the election that it was going to be stolen, and they were absolutely right. And I really want to say that there's an incredible grassroots movement in Ohio, and people on the ground, they held their own hearings after the election. They collected testimony, sworn affidavits. They did a great job of documenting what went on, and they didn't let it die. And that encouraged us to seek the recount in Ohio, as did a lot of other people. When we put out our announcement on November 5th that we called for an investigation, the response we got back was, an investigation's great, let's get a recount. So we announced on November 4th that we would seek a recount. Of course, we were basically broke at the time. We didn't have millions of dollars and thousands of lawyers. And KPFK here kind of leaked it out. And we made the official announcement on November 11th. Within 4 days, we had raised $113,000 that was necessary for the Ohio recount. We demanded the recount officially on November 19th, and the way that the recount proceeds is that it happens separately in each of Ohio's 88 counties. So we had to send separate requests to each of the 88 counties with the filing fee of $113,000. Now, several days later, we filed a lawsuit in federal court in the Northern District of Ohio asking them to expedite the recount. The reason we did this was Ohio law said that the recount would start when the votes were certified. Well, Kenneth Blackwell had been telling us the votes would be certified around December 6th. We couldn't get a straight answer, but December 6th was the date that we had. The problem with that is the Electoral College was supposed to cast their votes 1 week later on December 13th. It didn't leave enough time for a meaningful recount. So we filed suit in federal court to expedite the recount. I've got only a handful of minutes left, so this is going to be super compressed. In essence, the judge turned down our request to expedite the recount and said that because we wouldn't suffer irreparable harm, which is a legal standard we needed to show, he wouldn't expedite the recount. He did say it would be different if John Kerry was in court asking for it. A few days later, well, maybe about a week or so later, Delaware County sued us, and they sued our candidate, David Cobb, they sued Michael Bednarik, the Libertarian candidate, and they sued the National Voting Rights Institute, who was providing our legal counsel. They didn't want the recount to go ahead in Delaware County. Kerry and Edwards did intervene in that case on our side, saying the recount should go forward in all counties. I'm really going to have to do the Reader's Digest version of this, because I just went from 5 minutes to 2 minutes and about 30 seconds over here. There were a number of problems with the recount. The way that the recount is supposed to take place is that each individual county would select a random sampling of 3% of the precincts. They were counted by hand, they were counted by machine, and if the vote matched, that's the end of the recount. If the count is off by 1, anything, they do the test again. They compare it, and if it's still off, then they do a full hand recount of the county. Well, in 86 of the 88 counties in Ohio, there were not random recounts. What happened was the observers would show up, and the people at the Board of Elections would say, here are the precincts, here's what we're going to count today. Well, that's like the IRS auditing a big business, and the business saying, look at these books. Never mind the computers and the filing cabinets, look at these books. 86 of the 88 counties did not do the recount randomly. A number of counties did not do the full hand recount when they were supposed to. So the vote didn't match. Never mind, we don't have to do a full hand recount. Blatant violation of the law. The final problem was with security. Now, you might have heard of the incident in Hocking County, where a representative of the Triad Company that Bob referenced earlier showed up at the Hocking County Board of Elections, took apart the vote counting machine, and instructed some of the members of the Board of Elections how to create a cheat sheet and post it on the wall to make sure that the hand count and the machine count would match so they wouldn't have to do a full hand recount. The same representative testified that he went to about half a dozen other counties with similar instructions. In response to this, we filed a motion, a very sweeping and broad motion to preserve all evidence of the voting machines, ballots, and everything. Word leaked out on the internet that John Kerry was going to file this motion. He didn't, although several days later they did file about a one-sentence document in court that said, yeah, what the other guy said. On December 30th, we asked a federal judge to order a second recount because of all the incredible shenanigans that took place, an absolute lack of standards, no random sampling, and the refusal to do the countywide recounts when they were supposed to happen. At this point, it's still pending before the federal court. A couple of weeks ago, the judge asked us to prepare a statement on which venue the case should be heard in, whether in the Northern District where we originally filed or the Southern District where we had other litigation. In response to that, we filed our statement. Karen and Edwards also filed about a one-sentence thing saying, yeah, whatever those guys say. And that's where the litigation stands now. We've asked for a hearing on our motion to preserve evidence. We've asked for a hearing in our request for a second recount to be done this time in conformance with state and federal law, and that's where things are pending. I will say very briefly that we also filed recount requests in Nevada and New Mexico. We got the runaround in both of those places too, blatant violation of the law in New Mexico. I just want to conclude by saying that there have been a number of references to instant runoff voting here today. There are incredible systemic reforms that we need to actually have a democracy in this country. I think it's essential, as I've said before, that we have a genuine multi-party democracy. A lot of people, particularly Democrats, have hailed the Green Party this time around as being saviors, as being patriots, as being protectors of our democracy. We are all those things. A lot of these people also hailed us as spoilers 4 years ago. So we've gone from spoilers to saviors. We're doing the same thing. We haven't changed. The electoral system is rotten. If we have instant runoff voting, if we have access to debates, if we have campaign finance reform and proportional representation, we can all work together and achieve our common goals, which is a democracy that is really fitting of this country in the 21st century. Thank you.